Hello, welcome to Artisan Stitch. This is Jane. The video today is on the trouser fly zip. So this is an area of clothing which has until recently been quite traditional. So ladies' flies would always lap right over left. So you can see if you're wearing it right over left, whereas with men's it's left over right. Yeah, left over right. Now I've just checked on the jeans I'm wearing today and it's left over right, like the men's style. So it wouldn't really matter which way you did yours. It's one of these things that's sort of blended and isn't important now. So you will need your trouser fronts. So I've got my left and right pieces here. So this is the right side. Now something I do when I'm working with fabric which has a similar right and wrong side is I put a little chalk mark on all the wrong sides, and that stops you accidentally flipping one over and mixing them up. Little tip there that I always use on kind of plain fabric. So anyway, you've got your trouser fronts. Now I'm using my half scale patterns today. But this would be the front leading down into the crotch. So if you look at your full pattern, it would look like this. Now what I've got is actually that. But sometimes your trouser patterns have an extra fly facing included on ladies' patterns. So that's basically what you would get without it. And you would cut this on the right hand piece if you were using that pattern, but today I've actually to have a separate fly facing, and this is the piece that lies on the inside. So I'll show you on my sample. That's basically the bit that's on the inside here. As I say, so we're actually going to make a seam down here today with a separate piece. It depends on your pattern. Anyway, I've got my fly facing, I've got a fly piece or a fly cover. So that is the piece that sits on the back, like so. Now sometimes it's just a rectangle of fabric folded in half, but I've actually chosen to round mine off. So what I've done is this gets folded in half, and I've neatened the raw edges in preparation. I've also neatened my fly facing with my overlocker. You do of course need a zip. So you'll see on your pattern that you'll have a zip size recommended. There is a little dot mark on your pattern for the end of the zip. So if your zip is too long, like mine was, I've actually shortened it, and I have a separate video on how to shorten a zip, which I'll link in the description. So first thing we're going to do is put right sides together on our two trouser front pieces, and we're going to sew the crotch seam from the small dot right round to the bottom of the crotch. So let me do that in a second. Okay, I've stitched my crotch seam, I've pressed it, and I've pressed the seam open. Now we're going to put the fly facing on the right hand side. So I'm going to take my fly facing, lay it along the edge. Now this is going to get stitched. Again, we've got a small dot. This is going to get stitched down to where I finished my previous stitching. So I'm just using my 15mm or 5/8 seam allowance. I'm going to go and press that. So this is my fly facing pressed to the inside. Next is to press under 1.3 millimeters along on the left edge. So a little trick of mine is to draw the desired line on a piece of cardboard, which you can then use as your ruler. And I've got 1 centimetre here, which is 10 millimeters, or is 15. So it's 3/8 or 5/8. We basically want about 4/8. So it's somewhere in the middle. And that will mean that this will lie just underneath your fly facing from the front. Okay, this will lie just underneath. Right, so the next stage is for us to go and stitch part of the zip on. Okay, so the next stage is to take the fly cover and your zip and lay the zip along the fly cover quite close to the edge, and we're going to secure the zip to the fly cover with stitching. Now this could be tacking stitching or it could be regular stitching. So I'm going to use I'll just use my basting stitch, which is a long stitch. I've already put the zip foot on, moved my needle over. Let's see, using my stitch width selection dial to move the position of my needle. I'm just going to sew right down the centre of the zip tape. And this is just really a basting stitch. So that's going to hold everything in place for me to put the next piece on. I'm going to lay the trouser front on top of the zip, not quite touching the zip. So when you see from the other side, our edges are lying aligned. So the next step is to stitch the trouser front down to the fly cover. So the zip is sandwiched in between. So I've moved my needle further over to the left side of the zip foot, and that will give me a close stitch down this fold. Now, because the zip is going to be in the way, zipper pull, I'm going to get rid of that to start with. And when I get halfway down, replace the zip. stitching in and just finish on the centre front seam. A little bit of anchoring there. Okay, so there's one half of the zip stitched in place, and you have 2 rows of stitching on the back, obviously. First one is the tacking and the second one is the actual stitching to place. So next step is to anchor the zip to the fly facing. So we're going to position this just over to cover this stitching. So this step is probably the trickiest part. I think there. And pinning just along the fold. Okay, there we go, just to catch underneath and then through, back through the fold. I'm going to flip over. We need to flip the fly cover out the way, else we'll be stitching our trousers completely closed. We're going to stitch the zip to the fly facing. Again, my machine is in the right position just to catch down this edge. Just make sure that you have the fly cover peeled back, that you're not catching that in. So we just have one stage left now, and that's to do our top stitching. Of course, it's going to be the most difficult stage because every stitch is going to show, so we don't want any wonky bits. So I've got my little flap stitched, pinned securely down. You could tack that or baste if you want to. Now I've just taken this marking from the pattern, bringing it down and round. Make sure it's not going to be hitting your zip stopper. So that little bit of hard plastic or metal at the base of your zip. So just check that first. And I'll flip over. Again, I want to make sure the zip cover is held back. So I'm going to pin that out the way. So if we stitch through that, then we wouldn't be able to undo our zip. Right, so what we're stitching through is the top layer and the zip facing, possibly even back into the zip for extra strengthening. But as long as it's holding these 2 layers together, that's the whole purpose of this stage. So, deep breath. Let's give that a go. Now, I think I may put my regular foot back on for this. And to return my needle back to the centre position. So I have my guide. I a little notch on the foot. Stitch length is about 2.5 millimeters. So again, this is top stitch. Now throughout this video I've obviously been using a highly contrasting thread colour, but if I was doing this for real I would be using a closely matching thread to my favourite fabric. Oh, now I can breathe out. So, let's have a look. Right, so stitching is reasonably straight. We have our zip securely stitched in. There's our fly cover at the back. Okay, job done. Now, I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So there we have our fly cover, which will completely flap round. So as a little finishing touch, you can just stitch this onto here, just to hold this in place. Now, if you're doing sort of casual trouser like a chino or jeans, the pattern may actually tell you to do a bar tack right through all layers from the front, but if it's a more formal classic trouser you may not want to see that, so you can just do it underneath. So I could actually do it here, so I can peel this bit back and do it through here, this is the actual fly facing, or we could do it here. So I think let's do it here. So a few stitches to keep these layers together.